Picture this: you wake up tomorrow and check your phone, and there is another message from someone who drains every ounce of energy from your soul, and your stomach tightens. Because you know what comes next in manipulation. The guilt trips, the endless drama that pulls you into their chaos. And before you even get out of bed, your peace is already destroyed. And this happens every single day, and you tell yourself tomorrow will be different. You will set boundaries. You will not let them affect you. But by noon, you are right back in their trap, feeling angry, feeling depleted, feeling like you have no control. And here's the brutal truth: you do not have a people problem, you have a philosophy problem. Most men go through life thinking toxic people are the enemy, thinking if they could just remove these individuals from their world, everything would be fine. But that is the thinking of someone who does not understand power, because toxic people are everywhere in your family, at your work, in your social circles, and you cannot eliminate every single one. So the real question is not how do I avoid toxic people? The real question is how do I become so internally fortified that no external force can penetrate my peace. And that is what Stoicism teaches: not avoidance, but invulnerability. Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man in Rome, dealt with backstabbers, schemers, manipulators, people who smiled his face while plotting his downfall. And yet he wrote in his meditations, your power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. He did not try to change those people. He did not waste energy trying to make them understand or see a perspective. He built an internal fortress so strong that their attacks could not reach him. And this is what you must master. The Stoics understood something that modern psychology is only now catching up to. You cannot control other people. You cannot control what they say, what they do, how they try to manipulate you. But you have absolute dominion over one thing: your response. And your response determines everything. Because a toxic person only has power over you if you give them access to your emotions. And most men hand over that access freely every single day. Think about the last time someone said something that made your blood boil. Maybe they criticized you, disrespected you, tried to make you feel small. And what happened? Your heart rate increase, your muscles tense. You spend the next 3 hours replaying the conversation in your mind, thinking of what you should have said. And in that moment, they won. Because they took your peace, they took your focus, they took your power, and you gave it to them willingly. Epictetus, who was born a slave and became one of history's greatest philosophers, said, "It is not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." And this is not positive thinking nonsense. This is tactical psychological warfare. Because when you react emotionally to a toxic person, you are playing their game. And they are better at that game than you, because they have been practicing it their entire lives. Here is what makes someone vulnerable to toxic people. It is not weakness of character. It is lack of understanding about where your power actually resides. Most men think their power comes from being respected, from being liked, from having people treat them well. So when someone disrespects them, insults them, manipulates them, it feels like a loss of power. And that feeling triggers the need to fight back, to defend, to prove. And that reaction is exactly what toxic people feed on. But the Stoic understands that true power is indifference, not the fake indifference where you pretend not to care while seething inside, but genuine philosophical indifference rooted in the understanding that another person's opinion of you, their behavior toward you, their attempts to control you, these things have no bear on your actual worth or your actual peace unless you decide they do. Seneca wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." And this is the key, because when a toxic person attacks you, the actual words last maybe 30 seconds. But your mind, your emotions, your reactions, these can torture you for days, weeks, months. And who is doing that torture? Not them, you. And this is where most men lose, because they think the battle is external. They think if they could just win an argument, just make the other person understand, just get revenge, then they would have peace. But the battle is internal, and it always has been. The toxic person in your life right now, think about them. There might be a family member who constantly criticizes your choices, a co-worker who undermines your friend, who only reaches out when they need something, a partner who uses guilt and manipulation to control you, and every interaction with them leaves you feeling drained, angry, or worthless. And you've tried everything. You have tried being nice, you have tried setting boundaries, you have tried explaining how their behavior affects you, and nothing changes. And you know why? Because you're trying to change them. And that is a battle you will never win. But here is what you have not tried: becoming psychologically immune to them. And that is what this is about: not cutting people out, not avoiding confrontation, not winning arguments, but developing such a deep internal foundation that their chaos cannot touch you. And when you master this, everything changes. Because suddenly the person who used to ruin your entire day with one comment becomes powerless. Their words hit a wall they cannot penetrate, and You watch them escalate, trying harder to get a reaction, and you remain unmoved, and that is when you realize you have won not by defeating them, but by making yourself undefeatable. The first principle you must understand is a dichotomy of control. This is a foundation of Stoic philosophy, and it is a shield that makes you invulnerable. There are things within your control, and things outside your control, and toxic people, their behavior, their words, their intentions. These are completely outside your control, but your judgments, your reactions, your internal state, these are entirely within your control, and the moment you truly internalize this, the moment you stop trying to control what cannot be controlled, you become free. But most men never internalize as they intellectually agree with it, but when that toxic person sends that message, makes that comment, does that thing, they forget everything and react from emotion. And here is why. Because you have not trained yourself, you have not built the neural pathways, the automatic responses, the psychological armor that comes from daily practice. And without that practice, you will always be vulnerable. So here's what is coming. You are about to learn the specific Stoic techniques that build that armor, the daily practices that reprogram your automatic responses, the mental frameworks that make you immune to manipulation. And by the end, you will understand exactly how to face any toxic person in any situation and remain completely at peace, not because you do not care, but because you understand where your true power lies. And once you have that power, no one can take it from you. Let me show you what immunity actually looks like in practice, because this is not abstract philosophy. This is a weapon you can use today. Imagine you have a family member who every time you see them finds a way to criticize your life choices, your career, your relationship, your appearance. And for years this has bothered you, has made you defensive, has made you explain yourself, justify yourself, prove yourself. And every conversation ends with you feeling inadequate, feeling angry. And that night you cannot sleep, because you are replaying what they said and thinking of all the comebacks you should have said. Now imagine the same scenario, but you have internalized the Stoic principle that their opinion is not within your control, and more importantly, their opinion has no power to define your reality. So they make the same criticism, the same cutting remark, and something different happens inside you. Instead of that rush of defensive energy, instead of that need to prove them wrong, you feel nothing, not forced calm, not suppressed anger, but genuine indifference, because you understand at a cellular level that their words are just sounds, vibrations, and air that only become weapons if you pick them up and stab yourself with them. And here is what happens next. They expect a reaction they have trained you to give for years, and when it does not come, when you simply nod or change the subject or even agree with them just to watch their confusion, they do not know what to do, because you have removed yourself from a game they were playing. And a game requires two players. And when one player refuses to play, the game ends and the toxic person loses their power, not because you defeated them, but because you stopped participating in the battle they created. This is what Marcus Aurelius meant when he wrote, "When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly." But he did not write this to complain. He wrote it as preparation, as psychological armor. Because when you expect toxic behavior, when you understand that it is simply the nature of some people, then you are never caught off guard, never surprised, never emotionally hijacked by something you should have seen coming. And this is where most men fail in their preparation. They want to believe people will change. They want to believe if they're just nice enough, just patient enough, just clear enough with their boundaries, that the toxic person will suddenly see the light and transform. But that is not how human nature works. Toxic people are toxic because they get something from it: attention, control, power, the feeling of superiority. And as long as that behavior serves them, they will continue it. And you're explaining, you're pleading your boundaries, setting these things mean nothing to someone who does not want to change. So the Stoic approach is radically different. You do not try to fix them. You do not try to make them understand. You accept them exactly as they are: difficult, manipulative, draining, and you build your defenses accordingly. And this acceptance is not weakness. This is tactical superiority, because the person who accepts reality as it is has an enormous advantage over the person who wastes energy wishing reality were different. Seneca tells us of a technique he called premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. And this sounds dark, but is profoundly practical. Before you interact with a toxic person, you mentally rehearse the worst things they might say. Or do you visualize them insulting you, manipulating you, trying to make you feel guilty? And you practice your response in your mind. You practice remaining calm, unmoved, centered. And when the actual interaction happens, it is never as bad as what you prepared for, and your response is automatic because you have already trained it. Here's a practical application. Right now, think of the most toxic person in your life. Got them now. Imagine your next interaction with them, and imagine the worst possible version of that interaction. What is the most hurtful thing they could say? What is the most manipulative tactic they could use? Really feel it, let it be as bad as it could possibly be. And now ask yourself, if they did that exact thing, what would be the most powerful response? And the answer is almost never what your ego wants. The answer is almost never defending yourself, arguing, proving them wrong. The most powerful response is usually some form of this: I hear what you are saying. And then you continue with your day, because you understand that their attack was never really about you. It was about their need to feel superior, their need to control, their need to drag someone else down to their level of misery. And you do not need to participate in that. You can simply observe it the way you would observe a dog barking. You do not take it personally. You do not argue with the dog. You understand the dog is doing what dogs do, and you move on. But this requires something most men do not have: emotional discipline. And this is not about suppressing emotions or pretending you do not feel anything. This is about understanding that your emotions are information, not commands. Your anger, when someone disrespects you, is information. It tells you that you perceive a threat to your status or your dignity, but you do not have to obey that anger. You do not have to let it control your response. In the space between feeling the emotion and choosing your response, that space is where your freedom lives. Epictetus, who endured unimaginable hardship as a slave, said men are disturbed not by things, but by the views they take of them. And this is the secret that changes everything. Because right now you think the toxic person is making you angry, making you upset, making you lose your peace, but they cannot unless you allow them to. Your anger is your response to your interpretation of their behavior. And if you change your interpretation, you change everything. Here is what this looks like in real life. A co-worker undermines you in a meeting, takes credit for your work, makes you look incompetent in front of your boss. And the old you would have been furious, would have confronted them, would have spent days seething and plotting revenge. But the Stoic you sees this differently. You understand that this co-worker's behavior reveals their insecurity, their fear, their weakness, not yours. You understand that people who are confident and secure do not need to tear others down. And you feel something unexpected. You feel pity. And from that place of pity, you respond not with anger, but with strategy. Maybe you document everything. Maybe you quietly outperform them. Maybe you do nothing at all, because you recognize that people who play these games eventually destroy themselves, and you do not need to do anything except protect yourself and continue your work. And 6 months later, that co-worker is gone because their behavior caught up with them, and you never lost a single night of sleep because you understood the game and you refused to play it. This is the power of philosophical immunity. You transform from being reactive to being proactive, from being a victim of other people's behavior to being an architect of your own internal state. And when you have this, nothing can touch you, not because you're numb, not because you do not care, but because you understand what matters and what is not, and other people's toxicity simply does not matter. Now, let me tell you about the 3 types of toxic people you encounter and why understanding their psychology makes you invincible. Because most men treat all toxic people the same, and that is a mistake that cost them years apiece. The first type is the energy vampire. These are the people who complain endlessly, who turn every conversation into their personal therapy session, who call you only when they need something and never when you need them, and their weapon is guilt. They make you feel responsible for their happiness, for their problems, for their emotional state. And here is how they operate. They learned early in life that being helpless gets some attention, gets some sympathy, gets some other people to solve their problems. So they build an entire identity around being a victim. And when you try to help them, they do not actually want help, because being helped means losing their victim status, which is the only power they have. So they will reject every solution you offer. They will explain why nothing will work, and then they will be upset that you do not understand their struggle. The Stoic response to the energy vampire is not cruelty. It is clarity. You understand that their need is bottomless, that no amount of your energy will ever be enough. And you set boundaries not out of anger, but out of self-preservation. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." And the energy vampire wants you to become responsible for their life. And the moment you refuse that responsibility, the moment you say, "I care about you, but I cannot fix this for you," you reclaim your power. And watch what happens. They will escalate. They will try to make you feel guilty. They will tell you that you are abandoning them, that you do not care, that you are selfish. And this is the test. Because if you cave, if you go back to trying to save them, you have just taught them that escalation works, and they will use it forever. But if you hold firm, if you remain compassionate, but boundaried, something shifts. and either they will find someone else to drain or they will actually start solving their own problems, and either outcome is better than you sacrificing your peace. The second type is a saboteur, and this one is more dangerous because they hide their toxicity behind concern, behind friendship, behind love. These are the people who undermine your goals, who plant seeds of doubt, who celebrate your failures and minimize your successes. And their weapon is subtle. They never attack you directly. They just ask questions that sound reasonable, but are designed to make you second-guess yourself. You tell them about a goal, and they say that is interesting, but have you thought about how hard that will be? Or I knew someone who tried that, and it did not work out? Or are you sure you are ready for that? And on the surface, it sounds like they care, but what they are actually doing is projecting their own limitations onto you, because your success threatens them, your growth makes them confront their stagnation, and unconsciously or consciously they need you to stay small so they feel better about staying small. Seneca understood this deeply and wrote one of the most powerful passages in all of Stoic literature. He said, associate with people who are likely to improve you, welcome those who you are capable of improving the process. Is a mutual one, people learn as they teach, and he knew that the people you surround yourself with either elevate you or diminish you, and there is no neutral, and the saboteur is trying to diminish you while pretending to help you. So how does a Stoic handle the saboteur? With radical honesty, not with them, but with yourself. You stop pretending they have your best interests at heart. You stop making excuses for their behavior. You see them clearly, and once you see them clearly, you make a decision. And that decision is usually distance, not dramatic distance, not a big confrontation, just a quiet pulling back, a reduction in how much you share, how much access they have to your inner world. And here is what most men do not understand. You do not owe anyone an explanation for protecting your peace. You do not need to justify why you are spending less time with someone who drains you. You do not need their permission to prioritize your growth over their comfort. And this is where nice guys lose, because they think they have to be fair, they have to give everyone a chance, they have to explain their boundaries, but the saboteur will use every explanation as ammunition, will turn every boundary into a negotiation. The third type is a narcissist, and this is the final boss of toxic people, because they have spent their entire lives perfecting the art of manipulation, and their weapon is making you doubt your own reality. They lie, they gaslight, they rewrite history. They make you feel crazy for remembering things that actually happened. And if you've ever been in a relationship with a narcissist, you know the special kind of hell it creates, because you start questioning everything, including yourself. Epictetus, who knew what it meant to have no power under cruel masters, said, "He is a wise man who does not grieve for the things which he is not, but rejoices for those which he has." And this is a key to deal with a narcissist. You cannot make them see reason. You cannot make them take accountability. You cannot win an argument with someone who will simply deny reality itself. So you stop trying, and this feels like giving up, but it is actually the opposite. It is choosing a battle you can win. The battle you can win with a narcissist is a battle for your own mind, and this requires something extreme. It requires you to become emotionally unreachable, not cold, not cruel, but simply unavailable for their manipulation. And when they try to provoke you, you become boring. When they try to engage you in drama, you become uninterested. When they try to rewrite history, you do not argue, you just disengage. And this drives them insane, because narcissists need supply. They need reaction. They need to know they are affecting you. And when you give them nothing, when you become a gray rock, emotionless, unresponsive, they will either move on to someone else or they will escalate. And if they escalate, that is when you know you have one, because escalation is proof that their usual tactics are not working. And all you have to do is continue giving them nothing. Marcus Aurelius dealt with people like this in the Roman Senate, people who lied, who schemed, who smiled to his face while plotting against him, and he wrote this reminder for himself: you must not be surprised at the acts of the wicked man, but instead it is surprising that he did not commit other acts of similar nature. And this is the acceptance that sets you free. You stop being shocked by toxic behavior. You stop wishing people were different. You see them as they are, and you plan accordingly. Now, here's the technique that pulls all of this together, and it is called the inner citadel. This is not my term. This comes from the Stoics themselves, and it refers to the fortress you build in your mind that no external force can breach. And building this citadel requires 3 specific practices that most men never do, because they think just knowing philosophy is enough. But knowledge without practice is useless. It is like knowing how to fight, but never training your body. The first practice is morning preparation. Before you interact with anyone, before you check your phone, before you engage with the world, you spend 10 minutes mentally preparing yourself for difficulty. You remind yourself that you will encounter toxic people today. You visualize how you will respond. You rehearse your philosophical principles. And this is not pessimism, this is armor, because a man who expects difficulty is never caught off guard, and the man who is never caught off guard never loses his composure. The second practice is evening review. Before you sleep, you review your day, every interaction, every moment you lost your peace, every time you gave away your power, and you do not beat yourself up, you simply observe. And you ask, what could I have done differently, not to win the interaction, but to preserve my peace? And over time, this review creates new neural pathways, new automatic responses. And what used to trigger you stops working. The third practice is the most difficult, and it is this: you practice viewing yourself from the outside, as if you were watching a character in a movie. And when someone attacks you, insults you, manipulates you, you watch this happening to the character you, and you feel for that character, but you do not identify with that character. And this creates distant psychological space between the event and your emotional reaction. And in that space, you become free, because you realize that you are not your circumstances. You are not what happens to you. You are the awareness that observes what happens. And that awareness cannot be touched, cannot be harmed, cannot be controlled by anyone. And once you truly understand this, once you live from that place of awareness, toxic people become powerless, not because they stop being toxic, but because you have built something inside yourself that they cannot reach. And this brings us the most powerful technique the Stoics ever developed, and it is the one nobody talks about, because it sounds too simple to work. But I promise you, this single shift in perspective will change how you handle every toxic person for the rest of your life. And it is this: you start treating toxic interactions like weather. And here's what I mean. When it rains, you do not take it personally. You do not get angry at the sky. You do not spend hours analyzing why the universe is against. You simply acknowledge that it is raining, and you adjust accordingly. You grab an umbrella, or you stay inside, and you go on with your day. Toxic people are, whether they are environmental conditions that exist independent of you, their behavior has nothing to do with your worth, your value, your character. And when you truly internalize this, when you see their attacks as impersonal, as rain, you stop wasting energy trying to understand why they're the way they are. You stop trying to change them. You stop taking it personally, and you simply adjust your behavior to protect yourself and move forward. And this sounds too simple, but watch what happens when you apply it. Next time someone tries to provoke you, manipulate you, make you feel small, instead of engaging, instead of defending, instead of explaining, you simply think this is weather, and you respond accordingly. Maybe you walk away, maybe you change the subject, maybe you agree with them just to end the interaction faster. Because you understand that arguing with storm is pointless. The storm does not care about your feelings, does not respond to logic, does not change because you want it to, and neither does a toxic person. But here is where this gets deeper, because once you stop taking toxic behavior personally, something profound happens. You start seeing patterns, and you realize that the toxic person uses the same tactics over and over, because those tactics work on most people: the guilt trip, the silent treatment, the passive-aggressive comment, the victim narrative. And when you recognize the pattern, you cannot unsee it, and what used to hurt you now just becomes predictable, and predictability removes power. Seneca writes in his letters that we should study the tactics of our adversaries, not to become them, but to defend against them. And this is psychological warfare at its finest. Because when you can predict someone's next move, when you can see the manipulation coming before it lands, you are no longer a victim, you are a strategist. And the toxic person does not know what to do with someone who sees through their game. Let me show you how this works in real time. Imagine you have a mother who uses guilt as a weapon every time you try to live your own life, make your own choices. She says things like, "I guess I'm not important to you anymore," or "After everything I've done for you, this is how you treat me." And for years, this worked. You felt terrible. You change your plans, you sacrifice your needs to make her happy. And nothing you do is ever enough, because the guilt trip is not about getting you to do something specific. It is about maintaining control. But now you see the pattern, you recognize the tactic. And the next time she tries it, something different happens inside you. Instead of that familiar crush of guilt, instead of that panic, to fix it, you feel nothing, not because you do not love her, but because you understand that her emotional manipulation is her problem, not yours. And you respond with something simple like, "I hear that you are upset, and I love you, but I am making this decision." And then you do not engage further, you do not defend, you do not explain, you do not try to make her understand, because you know that would just be feeding the pattern. And she will escalate, the guilt will get heavier, the accusations sharper, because escalation is what happens when the old tactic stops working. And this is the moment that determines everything. Because if you cave, if you go back to the old pattern, you have just taught her that she needs to escalate more next time. But if you hold firm, if you remain loving but unmoved, she learns that the old weapon does not work anymore, and she will either adapt or she will reduce contact, and both outcomes are better than you living in guilt forever. Marcus Aurelius understood this deeply. He wrote the best way to avenge yourself is to not be like that. And this is the ultimate victory over toxic people, not making them suffer, not proving them wrong, but refusing to let their toxicity infect you, refusing to become bitter, resentful, manipulative yourself. And this requires constant vigilance, because the easier path is always to fight fire with fire, to respond to manipulation with manipulation, to hurt people who hurt you. But that path makes you exactly what you hate, and worse, it means they have won, because they have transformed you into a version of yourself you do not respect. And the Stoic refuses this. He endures the attack, he absorbs the blow, and he remains unchanged, not because he is weak, but because he is strong enough to stay true to his principles regardless of how others behave. And this is real strength, not reactive strength, but proactive strength that comes from within and cannot be touched by outside forces. Now, let me tell you about the concept the Stoics called apatheia, and this word has been mistranslated as apathy, which makes it sound like not caring, but that is completely wrong. Apatheia means freedom from destructive passions. It means you still feel emotions, but those emotions do not control, you do not dictate your behavior, do not determine your internal state. And this is the goal, not to become emotionless, but to become emotionally sovereign. And here's a practice that builds this. You start with small irritations: the person who cuts you off in traffic, the cashier, who is rude, the friend who cancels plans last minute. And instead of your automatic reaction, instead of anger, frustration, resentment, you pause and you practice the Stoic response, which is, this is outside my control. I choose peace. And at first it feels forced, feels fake, but you do it anyway because you're building new neural pathways. And after 100 times, 1,000 times, it stops being practice and starts being automatic. And then something incredible happens. You realize you have not been angry in weeks, not because nothing happened worth getting angry about, but because your threshold changed. What used to trigger you now just slides off, and you watch other people lose their minds over small things, and you feel grateful that you are no longer that person. And this gratitude reinforces the practice, and the practice deepens the transformation, and before long you'll become someone who is genuinely difficult to disturb. But the real test comes with the big things, the betrayals, the losses, the moments that would break most men. And this is where the years of practice pay off, because you have built such a strong foundation, such a deep well of internal stability, that even catastrophe cannot shake you. And I am not saying you do not feel pain. Everyone feels pain. But you do not let that pain destroy you. You do not let it define you. You feel, you acknowledge it, and you continue moving forward. Epictetus, who lost everything, who was beaten and crippled and enslaved, said this about adversity: difficulties are things that show a person what they are. And this is the Stoic paradox, that toxic people do not understand. They think they are hurting you, they think they are winning. But what they are actually doing is forging you into something stronger. And every attack that does not break you makes you more resilient, more unshakable, more free. And here's a final piece that ties everything together. You stop viewing toxic people as enemies, and you start viewing them as teachers, not because you are grateful for their toxicity, but because you recognize that they're showing you exactly where you still have work to do. Every person who triggers you is pointing to an attachment you have not released. Every manipulation that works on you reveals a weakness in your philosophy, and instead of blaming them for exposing that weakness, you thank them and you fix it. This is a master level, and most men never reach it because it requires radical honesty with yourself. It requires admitting that if someone can still affect you, then you have given them that power. And taking back that power is not about changing them, it is about changing yourself. And that work never ends, because there is always another level of freedom, always another attachment to release, always another way you are letting external things control your internal state. So now you have the complete picture. You understand the 3 types of toxic people. You understand the techniques that make you immune. You understand the daily practices that build your inner citadel. And now comes a moment of truth, because knowing this changes nothing, doing this changes everything. And most men will watch this, they will nod along, they will feel motivated. And then tomorrow, they will go right back to being controlled by toxic people. Because information without implementation is just entertainment. And here's why implementation fails for most men. They try to change everything at once. They try to become perfectly stoic overnight. And when they inevitably fail, when they lose their temper, or react emotionally, or give away their power, they decide the philosophy does not work, and they quit. But that is not how mastery happens. Mastery happens through micro improvements, through choosing peace one interaction at a time, through failing and reviewing and adjusting and trying again. Marcus Aurelius was not born Stoic. He became Stoic through decades of daily practice, through thousands of moments where he chose philosophy over emotion. And you have that same choice right now in this moment, and in the next moment, and in every moment for the rest of your life. And the beautiful thing is that every time you choose correctly, every time you respond with wisdom instead of reaction, you are building something permanent. You are literally rewiring your brain, creating new pathways that make the next choice easier. And here is what nobody tells you about this journey. There will be a moment, and you will know it when it happens, where you suddenly realize that the people who used to control you no longer, and where someone tries the old manipulation, the old guilt trip, the old disrespect. And you feel nothing, and that nothing is not numbness, it is freedom. And in that moment, you will understand what power actually means, not power over others, but power over yourself. And that is the only power that matters. Seneca wrote, "The whole future lies in uncertainty, live immediately." And this is a final lesson, because you cannot wait until you are perfectly trained, perfectly prepared, perfectly immune to start living your life. The toxic people in your world will always be there in some form. And if you wait until they are gone, or until they change, or until you have mastered every technique, you will wait forever. So you start now imperfectly messily with whatever tools you have, and you practice, and you grow, and you become. And let me tell you what happens when you commit to this path. When you truly embrace Stoic immunity, the first thing you notice is that you stop wasting energy you used to spend on anger, on resentment, on replaying conversations, and your mind suddenly becomes available for things that actually matter: your goals, your growth, your peace. And you realize how much of your life you were giving away to people who did not deserve it, and you take it back, not aggressively, but firmly, permanently. The second thing you notice is that relationships start to self-select. The toxic people in your life will either adapt to your new boundaries, or they will drift away. And at first this might feel like loss, but then you realize it is not loss, it is subtraction of what was poisoning you. And into that space come different people who respect you, who add to your life instead of draining it. And you understand that you were never meant to save everyone or fix everyone. You were meant to protect your peace and build your life. The third thing, and this is the most profound, you stop needing external validation. You stop needing people to understand you, to approve of you, to acknowledge your worth, because you've built that validation internally through your principles, through your daily practice, through your commitment to philosophy. And when you no longer need anything from toxic people, they lose all leverage and you become truly free. Epictetus said freedom is the only worthy goal in life, and this is what he meant: not political freedom, not financial freedom, but internal freedom, the ability to maintain your peace regardless of what happens around you. And that freedom is not given, it is built one choice at a time, one boundary, at a time, one moment of choosing wisdom over emotion, and you are building it right now. So here is your mission starting today. You pick one toxic person in your life, just one, and you apply everything you have learned. You prepare mentally before you interact. You practice viewing their behavior as whether you hold your boundaries without explanation, and you review each interaction, learning from what worked and what did not. And you do this for 30 days, and I guarantee you that person will either change how they treat you, or they will reduce contact, and either outcome is a win. And while you are doing this, you continue the daily practices of morning preparation, where you expect difficulty, and mentally rehearse your response, the evening review, where you examine your day without judgment. And you start building that inner citadel, that fortress of the mind that no external force can breach. And some days will be harder than others. Some days you will react emotionally, you will give away your power, and that is fine. That is part of the process. The only real failure is giving up. Because here's the truth that changes everything: you are not broken, you do not need to be fixed. You simply need to remember what you have always had: the power to choose your response, to power to control your mind, the power to maintain your peace. And toxic people are not your enemies, they are your training ground. They are showing you exactly where you need to grow. And every time you respond with wisdom instead of reaction, you are proving to yourself that you are stronger than you thought. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." And this is the ultimate realization that every obstacle, every difficult person, every toxic interaction is not blocking your path, it is a path. And the man who understands this stops avoiding difficulty and start embracing it as the forge that makes him unbreakable. So I want you to make a decision right now, not tomorrow, not after you think about it. Right now, decide that you will no longer be controlled by toxic people. Decide that you will build immunity. Decide that you will practice these principles daily, and watch what happens to your life. Because I promise you, 6 months from now, if you commit to this path, you will look back at the person you are today, and you will not recognize him. You will have become Someone new, someone stronger, someone free. And if you found value in this, if you are ready to continue this journey, if you want to master not just immunity to toxic people, but every aspect of Stoic philosophy, then subscribe to this channel. Because this is what we do here. We take ancient wisdom and we make it practical. We take philosophy and we turn it into power. And every video is designed to give you tools you can use immediately to transform your life. The choice is yours. You can close this video and go back to being controlled by toxic people, or you can implement what you have learned and become the kind of man who cannot be shaken, cannot be manipulated, cannot be broken. And that man is not somewhere in the future. That man is already inside you, waiting for you to claim him. So claim him starting now, starting today, and never look back.